Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This will be Easter Saturday morning. This will come up, I think. This is continuing on with the story of the little 65 gearbox that I've been doing. Just some bits and pieces. I'm not trying to show you how to rebuild a gearbox or anything of that nature. I'm just showing you some things that I discovered whilst diagnosing what was wrong with the box. And this is why just slapping a new set of bearings in them is not really the answer, and it's the other reason why I bought this little lathe. Everything that I do, I can't believe how many times in a week I use this thing for just little tiny jobs that make things so much simpler and easier and more effective to do. Sometimes I wish I had a big lathe, like a bigger one, but then I would just spend all day fiddling around on it and wouldn't get any work done. So that's another thing. Like if you're an alcoholic, just buy one bottle of beer and then go away from the pub. That's the best thing to do. And fiddling around with things like this follows a similar truth, I believe. So when I put the intermediate shaft with all the gears on it, now bear in mind that the intermediate shafts can't be dismantled generally. I mean, they can. They were never designed to be by BMW. They were always had to be bought as a shaft. However, people with a decent sized press found that they could strip the shafts out, swap gears around and put them back. I have a 50-ton press, and this has got a fair bit of a bend in the end of it, this thing, by shaft standards, and it did take a lot to press the first gear small cog off the end of this shaft. Just a fly short of 18 tons to shift it, and that's a lot of pressure on something like that, and that was with some heat too, by the way. This shaft is scrap and so is the gear, so it didn't really matter. Later on, when I've posted this video, I will put up a couple of stills that I took of the gears, and when I took the thing apart and was looking at it, I was kind of studying the ends of the teeth of the gears, and I thought, this has had something jam and lock up. The other thing that had happened was that some of the bearings, not all of the bearings, had been replaced and were new. Now the funny thing about that is if you were going to take a gearbox apart and put it back together again, you'd put all new bearings in it, wouldn't you? And then there were some gears that were different colours to others, and the gearbox in the bike was really noisy and nasty and shaky. So I sort of thought, right, when I put this in and spun it up to about 800 or 900 RPM, it should just spin fairly freely with virtually no vibration. By the time I didn't spin it to 900, I was heading for there, but I got to about 550 and bailed because it was threatening to set off the automatic stop on the lathe. So I pressed all the gears off it, mixed and matched some spare parts that I had, used a good shaft that I had left over from some other job, and put it all back together. It's ready to go back into the case as I make this video, and I might even go in on Saturday and do that. But I'll just show you. This is set at 160 RPM on the tacho. Now if you imagine, that's got about 10th hour, a bit more, 12th hour run out, right on the end where the bearing sits. Just imagine what that was doing to the gearbox when they tried to ride it around. This is just one of the things that complicates repairs and restoration on BMW motorbikes. And I'm not touting for business. I live in Australia. We have a fairly small population. I'm busy every day of the week. This can go anywhere in the world, I suppose. And there are big shops that have production runs and lines and everything else. But from my perspective, I spend more time trying to figure out what caused something not to be right than I spend fixing it. Doesn't mean I'm right every day. I make mistakes like everybody else, but here is one of the things that somebody obviously knew nothing about it, threw a couple of new bearings on the intermediate shaft and one on the output shaft, threw it back together with the original shims and expected that it would be fine. When it wasn't, they sold the bike. And the poor bugger that bought this didn't have the money to get it any better. But anyway, we fixed it now, or we will have in a few minutes. Stay well, ride safely, until we meet again.